It is a tragedy when the youth have to correct the old, when the younger has to chastise the older. Ladies and gentlemen, I got this one post from X, and it says it's by Abolish Rising, teaching them lies. And so, this is all like just to prepare. This is obviously about the conversation of whether or not something is alive, and whether or not like a child should be preserved. And it reaches an interesting point in this part of the conversation. It's about 1 minute long. We're gonna watch it. We're gonna see some comments, and we're gonna talk about just how tragic it is when it comes from the biblical perspective of how well, bittersweet. Bitter because it's not supposed to be that the young correct the old. Sweet that truth is even in the mouth of children. And so let's get into it, and then let's talk about it.
Hey, don't be influenced
or
by
she
these
was
people.
Hey, we're having a great conversation. It's really rude to interrupt.
It's really
These ladies
not.
approached me.
How you,
Yeah.
how you look at that and you say that's okay.
Side note, I do find it fascinating that, you know, people only defend the idea of freedom for themselves, and when they see others exercising the freedom in a way that is in disagreement with their ideology, they tend to want to suppress another person's freedom and want to shut down any other conversation when it disagrees with them. And I think that that's a telltale sign that a lot of individuals are somewhat co-opted by their ideologies, or dare I say the rightness of their the alleged rightness of their ideologies, to behave in unironically behavior that they would ascribe to their enemies or their political rivals. You know, fascist, Nazi, all these different words, authoritarian, etc. You know, bad guy. Well, you can't exhibit that behavior and call yourself a good guy. But I just found that interesting, just right off the bat. It's like you trying to stop them from kids from talking to them because obviously this person disagreed with you. Let's keep going.
Because that's a baby. A baby.
Yeah,
Yes, it
like
is.
a living person.
Iconic.
I can promise you, I've looked at the cells of babies. That's not one. I've never had an abortion, but guess what? If I got raped, I would get an abortion.
No.
I
You
absolutely
would,
would. You would just do adoption.
My auntie got raped and she didn't abort her baby.
Ooh, that is. You got to think about like let's take a moment. Let's go backwards. Look at how uncomfortable she looks. Like, that's her aunt, so she has a cousin, right? She has a cousin out there in the world, and this older person is using an argument for why. And you better believe that young people, children are very intelligent and articulate. That's what they can articulate themselves. They can reason very well. Now that's why we have careful programming when it comes to children, like what children see, because they can learn very quickly and come to certain conclusions. And so just to hear somebody essentially say that experience is a reason to justifiably want to end the life of a child must be a very unfortunate thing to hear for her. Again, our auntie had a child in this instance, and that's a cousin, that's a member of her family that essentially you're arguing shouldn't even exist based on your ideological presuppositions. And so let's hear that again. Let's keep moving.
My auntie got raped and she didn't abort her baby.
Yeah, but what if you don't have the ability?
My auntie.
You don't have the ability. What if you
I mean, I ain't even been lie. The kid mocks her. Like good for your auntie. That's crazy. So it's good for her, but you think it's a bad thing to keep the baby. Okay.
10
How old
and
are you?
11.
14. Okay. How old are you?
14?
Okay.
That's crazy. They're only 3 years apart. Did that kid say 11? Hold on. Let's go backwards.
What are them?
10
How old
and
are you?
11.
10 and 11. 3 years apart, and you've been ideologically radicalized. That's crazy.
14. Okay. How old are you?
14.
Okay. These ladies could teach you a lot, actually. They've been talking to me this entire conversation.
Well, clearly they can't.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
There's
so much. I promise you.
Yeah, you came up here and started.
Let that sink in. Let that sink in. What she just indicated there. Let's go back real quick.
So much. I promise you.
Yeah, you came.
I can teach them too so much. I promise. This is the problem with our educations. Like, you're getting a ideologically biased representation of any form of information, which is essentially trying to co-opt you to think a certain way and only a certain way. Now, obviously, there is a truth and there is a false. So naturally, clearly, like you should be at least guided that there is a proper conclusion. But again, these people, I think, do themselves a disservice when they introduce their side of the conversation this way. And I get it, you know, like all sides has their moments, but I think that consistently you see certain ideologies have a particular type of brutish, aggressive, well, passive aggressive articulation of the conversation.
Came up here and started telling them lies.
Yeah, exactly. And so, with that being said, let's see what we got in the comment section. It says, great camera work for an unexpected impromptu interaction. Yeah, W. It's a 360. Oh, so it's one of those beautiful cameras. Lulled. How about you shut up? Oh, yeah, W, little girl, W. Imagine trauma dumping on a 10-year-old to win an argument. That is, like, and again, I'm glad somebody says it, because you hear this type of argumentation a lot, and exclusively in this context. Nobody wants to talk about, hey, let's actually set out some further litigation to protect our women from ever having to go through this experience, whether it's a new app, whether it's just lessening gun control specifically for women, that they should have, you know, protection at all times, or introducing some form of like potentially lethal but more than likely not lethal type of weapon that women can have on them at all times. Yeah, I think pepper spray is a good thing, but I think that it has its limitations, you know. And so, you know, like anything to address the actual issue of that unfortunate circumstance that women should never have to go through. No, it's always, I want to sort of sling this into the conversation like a boomerang that I could throw out my pocket, or, you know what I'm saying? Like that'll essentially win me the argument and shut the other side up. It's like, what? Why don't you actually address the problem you brought in? We'll read a few more comments, then we'll get into the text. Man, I've been noticing how easy it is to tell their stance based on the way they dress and look. Yeah, a lot of individuals famously wear their ideologies on a sleeve, and yeah, it's becoming easier to view people. I mean, look at this. Like weird earrings, interesting hair colors, strange clothing that's both revealing yet oh, don't get started on the is that a piercing? Yeah, a piercing in her nose and whatever the heck that is between her eyes. But either way, yeah, it's coming very easily to see people for what they are. Let's see. It says you must prevent kids from ending up like this. Yeah, it's tragic to see our young women, our young American women, well, like this. And it's not what they're wearing, it's what it symbolizes. Like, you're trying to be different without any actually direction. And the direction you choose is often nowhere. But anyways, notice how the kids look normal and saying the other two look like Joker goons to Batman with throwing at wall. Oh man, that's funny. I'm sorry, that's funny. That's actually hilarious. We'll read one more and we'll keep going. It says, a fetus is not a sentient child. Under no circumstances should a woman be expected to carry out pregnancy and raise that child. Absolutely delusional to even consider it. Okay, like let's have a conversation. Like, let's have a little bit of an adult conversation here. Well, first and foremost, the assertion that a fetus later has the traits of life in its late stages is a cope. It's a cope. The term fetus famously literally just means offspring. And so the idea that we can consider bacteria, microorganisms living versus what they call a large clump of small cells, right, as not alive, is scientifically illogical for me. I'm sorry. And so the idea of quote unquote sentience, proving you're alive or not, is obviously another cope, because it's like, what? So if you're in a coma, you show no brain functionality, we could just kill you now because you're not alive? What? That's retarded. No, clearly sentience is irrelevant in the idea of life. I mean, what, a tree sentient? And before somebody goes in the comments and tries to correct, yes, trees are sentient. I just made it as a joke, just to show how, okay, what is considered sentience. And if it's obviously stuff like just the traits of life, then it's like, what is going on here? And of course, the idea of expected to carry out pregnancy. I think that a lot of people are co-opting the bad guy doing a bad thing onto, okay, this is now a life developing in your womb. And I get it, it's not a clean type of discussion, it ruffles feathers, but hear both sides. Don't just hear, okay, he did this. Hear, what is this? You get what I'm saying? So that's all I'll say on that. I mean, it's not delusional, it's obviously examining, because again, we are to do this in law, right? If you a pregnant woman, then clearly that is considered a double homicide, right? Or you strike a pregnant woman and she has a miscarriage, that is considered a homicide. Why? Because the law was built around what we already understood as scientifically true, that yes, a babe, like what is developing in you is life, not potential life. It's alive right now. And so like when we look at it, when we obviously look at it from the legal terminology, it becomes undeniably clear, and original science, because this new modern science is kind of going Philly Willy right now. Like, and I think the culture war has shifted completely back into a sort of conservative type mindset. So maybe we might see some difference of in the scientific opinion and the apologetics. But again, it's like, what? Like, you really all stood 10 toes down, like, from a legal standpoint and purely scientifics, to tell the truth, and now you're co-opted by political ideologies and weird sentimentality to say something different. What's wrong with y'all? But either way, forgive me that it take a little bit long to get to the text today, but let's talk about how it is a bittersweet thing that young babies can speak truth while unfortunately the elders are in nonsense. In Psalm 8 verse 2, it says, out of the mouth of babes and infants you have established strength because of your foes, to still the enemy and the avenger. It's very clear that there's this perspective that yes, God has put truth as something near to the babies so that they can stand 10 toes down regardless of having accomplishment. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. We saw that here in this video where yes, those young girls are able to stand 10 toes down for what they believe and stand and say it's alive. There is no we're not debating this, despite maybe a way of how the elder tried to co-opt their ideology and move them from their truth. But is this something that's new? No. If anything, Gia speaks on this by saying in Matthew chapter 11 verse 25, at the time Jesus declared, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise understanding and revealed them to children. You see, God has a way of giving the humble grace and wisdom, especially in juxtaposition to his opinion on the proud, where he just says, no, I avoid you at all costs. Why? Is it because God hates wisdom and understanding? No, it's very clear that people want to find wisdom and understanding elsewhere rather than in him, and that is why it pleases him to do what he does to the youth, to the poor, to the inexperienced, to the unlearned. Why? Because they stand 10 toes down humbly on the Lord and not on their own opinions. First Timothy chapter 4 verse 12 highlights a very beautiful passage, very near and dear to my heart, as the entire Bible is, and it's about Paul essentially checking Timothy to essentially not let anybody look down upon him because he's a bit of a younger man. He says, let no one despise you for your youth, but set the believers an example in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, in purity. In other words, he makes it very clear, pay no mind to those who want to discredit you because of your young age, but instead show them the type of man who you are by the way you speak, by the way you walk, by the way your heart is passionate about others and the truth, and of course holiness. Let that speak up for you, because this will shut the mouths of everybody. Doesn't matter how old you are, but if you stand in truth, you will prevail. And this is a beautiful thing that's seen as sort of this precursor in the Old Testament. For those who don't know about the book of Job, it's a very powerful book of how one has to learn that God is in control, and you will, and do not confront him about his decisions, because he knows he's not doing things lightly. He is in control. And it details a bit of a back and forth between Job and three men, with the youngest individual there kind of bear witness to this sort of 3v1, right? Essentially getting fed up with their nonsensical conclusions based on pretty much what they assume to be true about Job and what in his circumstances. And he just outright says this after hearing them go back and forth, and it coming to no conclusion in challenging Job in the very specific foundation of his stance, of him essentially challenging God's decision with his righteous account of his life. Basically, he's gonna bring his case before God and say, listen, I'm gonna prove myself right before you, and we're gonna go move on. No, that's not gonna happen. And so we're only gonna read 5 verses of this exchange, because I think this is the most powerful introduction of what he says. Go read the rest by yourself. And Elihu, the son of Barachel, I'm butchering these, I'm sorry, the Bizite, answered and said, I am young in years and you are aged. Therefore I was timid and afraid to declare my opinion to you. I said, let days speak and many years teach wisdom, but it is the spirit of man, the breath of the Almighty, that makes him understand. It is not the old who are wise, nor the aged who understand what is right. Therefore I say, listen to me, let me declare my opinion. A very powerful introduction where he basically sets the terms of, hey, I came to this conversation humble, and I let everyone who was more experienced than me have their say, but now I can bear witness and understand truth. And wisdom is not because you've lived a long time. It's not because you're so old. It's because God gives you wisdom, and that can come at any age. And that's the whole point of his essentially thesis to what he's about to say. And let's just say he lays it into Job diabolically so, just outright confronting him with his assertions that essentially God will hear you challenge him, and essentially you will win that argument. No, intellectually speaking, no. Powerfully, no, because you have no power. And humbly, no, because you're essentially prideful in your thinking. And so what is there to say? Well, this is a beautiful example of young people stepping up to the plate and essentially saying, yeah, truth remains true, and I'm going to stand on it. And so the theme of this video sort of amounts to this with Joshua chapter 1 verse 9. Have I not commanded you? This is God speaking. Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. God's truth is in his word, and if you carry that in your heart, you have nothing to be afraid of. Stand 10 toes down. Hey, these 11 and 10-year-olds did it to these 14-year-olds who stood and challenged them, and they said, no, we're not going to hear your malarkey. We're going to hear what the truth says. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that's a beautiful thing. And naturally, this isn't a knock against anyone who was older. Naturally, they're like, this is pointing out the dysfunction of an older person not having wisdom to match their age. Not necessarily, oh, just because you're old, therefore you can never be wise. No, there's something in the middle that says, hey, wisdom comes by hearing the Lord and his truth, and that come at any age and increase at any age. And so be encouraged, no matter what age you are watching this, to, well, learn, grow, and come to the fullest of the knowledge of the truth, because that's what God wants. That's what Peter says. That's what Peter says God wants. Not what he said, verse on the screen. Either way, this video is a little bit longer than I thought I was going to go with this one. And so I'll end it right here. What do you think in the comments? Let me know, and I'll see you guys in the next one. God bless and stay blessed.